Once again, welcome everyone to Thriving Now. My name is Jemma Riedel-Johnson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here at YWCA Spokane. This conversation today is going to be so powerful. I'm so glad that we're going to be joined with Askia Underwood, a recent survivor who was featured in the documentary Uncovered: The Secrets We Hide. Because of that, our discussion today is going to include some sensitive topics. We are going to have a really frank and honest conversation about the realities of domestic violence. I encourage you all to practice self-care today, whatever that means for you during the event and beyond, as some of the content can be triggering. Please know that help is always available either through the National Domestic Violence Hotline or our own local YWCA Spokane TV helpline. At this time, I would love to welcome Caroline and Askia to join me here. Caroline is our CSO, Community Service Office Advocate, and fantastic prevention specialist. And then Askia Underwood is the survivor I mentioned earlier who was featured. Welcome you two, if you want to expand upon that really brief introduction.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to kind of share my experience and help people understand what my life is like now versus what it was like when I was living in those circumstances. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful and hopeful that this conversation can help just trigger one little thing that might save at least one person in the future.
Hi, everyone. So grateful to be here. Really grateful to spend some time with Jemma and Askia and just talking about this, of course, very important topic. My role at YWCA Spokane is within the realm of economic justice for survivors, as I'm contracted with the Department of Social and Health Services and our local community service offices for survivors who are receiving cash assistance from the state.
Fantastic. For those of you who were able to view the documentary already, what a fantastic telling of your story, Askia. And I would love to first start with how life has changed for you since the documentary, since you spoke with Nicole.
Yeah, I spoke with Nicole, which was really interesting. I had just gotten engaged to my now husband when we sat and had that conversation. I was recanting these events. And so it felt a little bit like I was standing in two different lives. Like the person that I was speaking about doesn't live here anymore. Like I recognize her, I know her, I feel her, but that person that I was in those circumstances isn't here. I am now happily married. You can see pictures back here. And living my best life every day. I think I thought that I was trying to do that in the past, and now I am very intentional about making sure that my happiness, my safety, my children's happiness and safety is prioritized in a new way.
How beautiful. And I know that that can be such a journey for survivors into getting to that place where they can prioritize their happiness and their children's happiness. I'm curious, Caroline, like how you see that path for other survivors you've worked with or just in general.
Oh, yes. It's a real thing of beauty to be able to witness that when survivors are able to take those steps and feel like it's safe enough to move forward. Something that I was thinking about watching the documentary Askia, when it became a bit like about your children, then something changed. And I see that a lot. All of my folks that I work with do have children in their home, and that can be a proponent of let's move forward. It's not just me anymore. And in my world, some of that might look like obtaining some sort of employment or something that moves them on from whatever benefits they're receiving from the state into a different kind of self-sufficiency or economic justice, whatever that can look like for an individual household. It's always just it feels like such a an honor to be able to even hear about it over the phone. Most of our communication with clients now are over the phone, but yeah, it's an honor.
What I was hearing a little, Caroline, what you were saying is some of the barriers that folks come up against as they're trying to kind of move forward with their lives. And I'm curious, Askia, what kind of complexities or what else came up for you as you moved towards this area of thriving?
I think the first thing that happened was I had to decide to not continue in any way, shape, or form. I had to decide that I was going to go this direction and not look back anymore. And that was probably the hardest decision. That took the longest time to make. I'd already decided that I knew my partner was violent and not safe for me. And I saw his behavior escalating, but I was still in some level of denial that I had to kind of sit in that space in order for my kids to have this experience of a family that I was really deeply concerned about them not having. Whether he was being violent or angry or whether it was turbulent or not, I always felt like if it's aimed at me, it doesn't necessarily affect them. But to your point, Caroline, the nanosecond that I saw one thing, everything was just like, oh no, this is where either I'm going to harm you and ruin my children's life in a different way by going to prison, okay? Or I'm gonna go forward, right? And going forward for most women in these circumstances means taking a step back. It means you have to go get resources. You have to go and apply for services you didn't have before. You have to find a new way and establish yourself with significantly less resources. And that's a big part. I had to agree, pride to the side, babies first, babies first, babies first. And when you just put babies first, it's really easy to go and sit with a person like Caroline and say, I have no money. I can't afford diapers. I need formula. How do I rent a breast pump? I sold all my things. I have $700. I can't live anywhere. What do I do? Right? So you have to be willing to take that step back so you can almost like catapult yourself forward. That's what I did.
Yeah, I will say our team sees a lot of TANF recipients who it's their first time ever receiving some kind of benefit from the state. And it was the last resort. And they don't know what to do with this incredibly huge system that, you know, has its pros and cons, especially for, you know, a single mother, for example, or someone in crisis. And our team really takes care to highlight like what kind of strength it takes to even say, I do need help. That is when you ask for help, you're acknowledging a lot of truths about your situation. And that can be very, very hard.
And the questions that you're asked are so invasive without, I don't think it's intentional, but you're just going through these itemized list of questions you're required to ask everybody. But those questions, when you are in crisis and not even really prepared to accept that you're in crisis, like hearing that word right now is painful, but you know you're in a set of circumstances that are extremely challenging. You need this person who's sitting in front of you to help you get out of those circumstances. In order for you to get out of those circumstances, you have to answer hard questions. And depending on the person you're talking to, I've spoken to women who have had an experience where they were almost like not believed when they were saying, no, I really don't have anything. Like he's not living with me. He's not in the household. It's just me and my kids. And they were like, okay, you know, and they could feel judgment, which made them just forget the whole thing. Like, forget it. I'd rather do something different. Whatever that is, right? To survive, this is too challenging. And so I'm always very mindful about women that are living in these circumstances. I'm always thinking about like, what is somebody going through today? And what does it look like today if they're trying to figure out how to get out? Can they do those things online? Can they answer those questions online? Do they have to go sit in a room with a ton of people where it's open air and pour your heart out and show them you have nothing. Bring your bank statements that show you have no money and how the money was depleted over time. Like those things are additionally humiliating, which creates a pause in you wanting to even continue forward, even though you need those things. It doesn't feel safe. And that's what you're really looking for.
Yeah, it's so that even that first step before going and seeking help is the admission, like Caroline was saying, that we do need help. And there is such a stigma around needing services or being a survivor. And I'm curious if how any of that maybe played into your experience, Askia, of that being able to recognize the situation.
I had a hard, I thought there was money in the bank because I knew I wasn't spending money. I was being very careful. I was taking care of a brand new baby. I had an idea in my mind, but I hadn't opened up an envelope. And when I went to the bank and put my ATM card and tried to get $40 out, it said insufficient funds. And I was like, pause. Like, wait, what? And then I put it in again and I was like, well, I want $20. And it didn't have, it was still insufficient funds. I had $13. And diapers at this time were $16.99. And I just immediately thought, oh, this is really bad. So I go into the bank and I have them pull out my bank statements and you just see withdrawal, 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 withdrawal. And it's like, okay, now what do I do? And I go home and I'm like, okay, I have this many diapers. Okay, I have this many cans of formula. I'm nursing. Okay, I need to nurse more. And you're just like trying to problem solve. And once you get to like, okay, what about the lights? What about my older? I can't nurse my 12-year-old. Like, what am I going to do to feed my 12-year-old who's growing and eating more than ever? What am I going to do to feed my body? That's when you go, okay, I have to do something that is going to save us from these. We're not going to starve. I'm not that proud. We're not going to starve. We may not be able to live in the space we're in, but I have a family. We can go back there. And another option appeared for me by the grace of God. Another option appeared and I took that option and it was essentially our saving grace. But I did always have the option to go home. And there are some people who don't have that.
That's very true. That's very true. There are some survivors we work with who have been brought to Spokane by their perpetrator and are isolated. Their family is across the country and they don't have a support system. It's just one impossible decision after another.
It feels nonstop. It feels like you look around and you're like, okay, I got to start opening up envelopes. And every single time you open one, you're like, how am I going to do this? And then you have to go and ask those services individually. Is there a way for me to make a payment arrangement? How can I keep my lights on? Right? How do I do that when I don't have any money? And almost all of the services that any municipality has some service that will allow for you to kind of create like a stall, or they'll either pay a portion of your bill to keep your utilities on when you have children, but you first need to be approved by the state for services. And so you can't avoid that experience of having to go and apply and say that you don't have enough money for food and that you need additional resources to protect and save your kids or insulate them a little bit while you navigate this space to get more resources, especially financial resources.
And I mean, just from this conversation, it's so easy to see how complex these situations are, right? It's not so simple as, we'll just leave, just walk away right in that moment, because there's all these other details, all of these other complexities with these situations. Are there any other thoughts you want to share about how the realities are much more complex than what people may think looking in from the outside?
I mean, it's immensely complex, right? Because you are living in a secret. No one, I've never met a person who's running down the street saying, I'm getting abused. Hey, I'm experiencing emotional abuse on a daily basis. And my partner, who I love and have children with, his violence, it's escalating. Has anybody met that person? The person that says, hey, I'm really struggling. I have no money and I have 2 kids. I was thriving and you just saw me a few days ago in my diamond necklace, but I had to pawn that so that I could pay part of my light bill to keep my lights on, right? I don't know if there are people, I haven't seen them yet. And so because you live in these this kind of secret bubble, this alternate world, the reality of your reality forces you, it just throws you out. And you have to decide whether you're going to allow it to sink you or whether you're going to swim and thrive. You have to say, okay, let me get through this thing so I can get to this thing, so I can get to this thing, which takes the pressure off so I can think straight about the next thing. You have to be really intentional and almost be a little bit angry about it so that you make sure that you do the steps you need to do to protect yourself. Because the goal is to protect your future. The goal is to not allow for the circumstances to overtake you, because it's really easy for that to happen. I mean, there are women who go to the state for services and they're denied. Right? And so then what do those people do? So I was fortunate enough, I wasn't denied. And I took the $700 they gave me in food stamps and I put my little card in my pocket and I treated it like it was an Amex. I just decided you are not a victim of your circumstances. Girl, this is a means to an end. This is just the means to an end. You are amazing and smart and wonderful despite. And you have to continuously tell yourself that. That's the reality. And that's really hard. That's really hard when you're packing up boxes. It's really challenging. So you have to, make really hard decisions in the darkest reality. Face those few obstacles you have to, if you need to navigate those. And then decide okay, I've gotten these little pieces done. Now I'm going to carve a path out for our future. And this is what it looks like. And what I did was I just wrote everything down. Today, this happened. Today, this happened. Today, this happened. I looked for a job today. I don't even know why I applied for that job. I'm overqualified. I did this. I did that. I changed my resume. I went for a walk today. I need a diet. I can't fit my suits. I gotta save $100 next month so that I can buy a new suit, or I gotta borrow a suit for my mom. I was just trying to be as resourceful as I possibly could. And I think that's how I won. That was kind of the recipe that helped me. Between that and praying nonstop, praying in the daytime and the nighttime and in the shower and at the gym, praying nonstop is how it happened for me.
I think from our conversation we had earlier too, just this great sense of how future forward you were thinking, how you were able to see that this current reality is not forever. And being able to break some of those things down into smaller steps is so important, because otherwise it can seem really big and looming, and how on earth do we get from here to there? But by being able to have those smaller goals, being able to see, okay, what's just the next step? It seems like you were able to kind of traverse that. And I feel like that's a lot of what some of our advocates do here with folks, is helping them kind of break those things down into smaller steps.
That's the best thing. It is, looming is the exact word. You already feel like the worst version of yourself. To take the worst version of yourself into a space where you're asking for help is, it was rough. There was no there was no lollipop at the end. Like when you go to the doctor, you get a shot, you get a lollipop. No. There's none of that, right? It's okay, you did this thing, and you look around, you're look at all these people who also need help too. That you don't think about it. When everything is great and you have all the money you want and you live where you want, and you have the lifestyle you want, despite this one little thing in your relationship, You don't think and you don't see people that are going through the exact same circumstances as you. And that part made me go, okay, 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 girl, get it together. It was a lot of get it together. Focus. You got to do these things. It's good. You got to fill this thing out. I think I signed my food stamp form on my stroller. That was the hard surface I had. My baby was laying in my lap. I signed it on the shoulder. And I thought, this is insane. Girl, you owned an agency. Like, you have clients that spent millions of dollars with you. How is this your circumstance? And when I stopped asking myself those questions and was just like, Askia, it's all good. This is temporary. Tiny steps, tiny steps, tiny steps, tiny steps is when I could just see the future, like just kind of opening up and becoming really bright. I sign everything that I write, Future So Bright, because I'm just super optimistic in that way. I feel like it's the best possible manifestation. It's like, just, I don't know what to say about myself. Maybe you don't feel good about yourself, but if you just say Future So Bright, you can pivot your positioning around your circumstances and help your babies thrive through it. Because they have to thrive through it too. And they deserve to see their mom thrive. They don't need to know all of the little nuances of what you're going through if you can avoid it. If you can avoid it. And that's also hard, right? So you have to find a way to clear your mind enough so that you can create a new reality for your babies that makes them feel safer and protected despite the absence of a person that they might love really deeply. Because it's their parents sometimes.
I feel like the resourcefulness that we see a lot is being able to go out and complete some action items. But I'm also hearing from you and what I've seen with my own folks that I work with, the resourcefulness is these inside resources that allow change to sort of be seen as a possibility. Advocates here, we like to say that we're resource brokers. We have, resources for diapers, everything, pretty much. And if we don't have it, we know who to ask. But what we learn every time, probably every interaction with a client, is a new way to think about a resource or a new, I feel like I learn about other resources from my clients, which helps me help, support others. And it's amazing every day, like what you are trying to juggle, and you are still creative and you're problem solving in a unique, complex way, maybe because you have to. But it's just, I was thinking about that when I was hearing you talk about the resourcefulness and what's coming from inside.
You have to have the desire to survive first. I'm going to make it, period. Like, end of sentence, close the book, give me a new tablet. Like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. Today is today. Tomorrow is, who knows?
Right.
It's always about like just getting through the day in the best possible way. Because those first few days, weeks, it feels like your world, and it doesn't feel like it, your world literally is turned upside down. You are without the comforts of the space you lived in. You are navigating like a weird breakup, not necessarily like a traditional breakup, a different kind of breakup where you're really trying to sever a relationship. You're not trying to be friends in the future. Severing this relationship until you can get healthy. And I know you don't think you have any issues because you told me I have all the problems. So that's not probable. You're probably not going to go get help. And if you don't get help, what does that look like? In my case, it looks ultimately like abandonment. That's what my children's father chose. He just chose to go. He went this direction, and I could have very easily, like a lot of people do, go that direction, and I went the opposite.
There's,
quickly,
yeah,
fast. I ran in the opposite direction.
there's so much that was just said that I really want to just unpack for a second. Gosh, I was hearing, one of the things we like to say is that survivors are good at surviving, right? So going back to that, they are able to survive each situation because they have to, right? They are forced to, and to, access whatever resources that they need to for themselves and for their families. And the other thing that I was kind of hearing, especially nearer to the end, was this idea of how hard it is in these situations where it is this individual that we've maybe built a life with, that we love, and we realize that these behaviors aren't okay, and we want something different for ourselves or for our future. And so how you kind of juggle both of those feelings, that both and, I imagine it's incredibly complex and confusing, and there's a lot of internal back and forth that goes along with that.
Yeah, it's hard. Nothing worth having though is easy. People say that and it's like that kind of like love, light, laughter thing that you see, right? Nothing worth having is easy. And the one thing I got in the absence of that person is peace of mind.
Hmm.
And when he was gone, I was like, ooh, all of these creative ideas came to mind, like unlocked completely new potential, which I decided that I was going to capitalize on. I had new ideas, new concepts. Things are just like coming to me. Old pieces of me were like coming back and being reborn. Pieces that I just had to like suppress because they made this person insecure, for example, right? Relationships with clients that made him uncomfortable that I really could have leveraged, I went back to with new creative and new ideas. And I'm so grateful that all of my clients were like, we love you. Where the heck have you been? Come on back into the business and help us do this thing, right? I'm grateful that I was so good at my job that I had something to go back to.
Hmm.
And I was thinking when we scheduled this about the women who don't have a job, that are completely dependent on their partner who is harming them, and what that looks like, what pivoting for them looks like. And it might look like an impossibility for them. Honestly, truly, if they haven't been an earner, maybe they don't have the education, or they graduated, got married early, went to, didn't go to work, became a mom, and they feel anchored in to a dangerous situation. What does it look like for them? And I like highly advise, not invest, highly advise them to write. Just write down what they want. Just for them, not for the kids. What do you want? And I guarantee you at some point in that list, peace of mind is going to be there. And when they have peace of mind, oh, here comes an Etsy business. Here comes this idea. Here comes this, right? Because you just start ideating and conceptualizing what peace of mind will look like for you. It's kind of how like ingenuity is formed, how innovation is formed through lack, right? And so I'm trying to find a way to honor the space that they're in, honor the space that those women are in, those young mothers are in, because I find that it's happening more to younger mothers. I was a young mother, and praying that they just write down. The first word is thrive. Get a piece of paper, write down thrive. What do you want? What does that mean? Take that piece of paper and fold it up and put it into your wallet. Put it in your wallet. I had a little card. It was a bookmarker that my kid had brought home. It was a blank one. And I wrote all of these things about my future on this card, and I put it in the slot where I had no money. And I carried it around for 10 years. And I said, okay, girl, you have turned the corner. Here we go. I tore it up and I wrote a new card about my new future. And here I am sitting in it. And it really is that tiny little change of like, what do you need for you? despite this stuff, what do you need for you? You can design your exit. You can design it. It doesn't have to be tumultuous like we imagine. You're packing your suitcase, you got a baby on your hip. You can't take this because he won't let you. You're fighting over this. You can design and craft a safe exit if you just create the space for yourself to ideate it. You don't have to wait for the worst thing to happen. Don't have to.
And I imagine it can be so difficult too when we are feeling so stuck, right? Stuck in a reality, in a certain situation, to be able to even imagine, to give space to imagine what a different future could look like for ourselves. Caroline, I'm curious if you had other thoughts come up.
Similar actually to what you just mentioned. It is one, I'm just trying to think of some folks I've worked with who have shared that they've been able to think about the future. It feels like maybe some are still in that, like you're saying, Askia, the just today, I don't know what tomorrow is. And I don't have the space to even imagine what I will face tomorrow. I'm curious if it felt like, was there a point where you were like, now I can think about tomorrow? Or was that something you always kind of carried with you?
I've always, so by trade, in my work, I'm a marketer and a strategist. So I'm always thinking about the future. And I just pivoted that into my personal life. What I plan for clients, I was like, I'm going to take what I do for them that makes them really successful, and I'm going to put it inside of me. And build a plan. What is the plan going to be? And I just remember the first thing was, you need food stamps. How are you going to eat? How are you going to eat? Okay. Then the next thing was like, okay, where are we going to live? Where are we going to live? Right. And then it was, I need to get a restraining order. I need to make sure this person is not going to have the ability to easily just come back and do whatever he wants to my body. Right. And I think when you're like, okay, got that one. So we're going to eat and we will be sheltered. Okay. Now I can think about, I think I wore the same sweats for like 2 weeks straight. I took them off. I put them on. I took them off. I put them on. 3 weeks. I was just like, I don't remember. There were some things about the first few months that I just don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't have recollection of. I know that I didn't sleep like the first 3 weeks. I was sleeping in the daytime when my son was at school. I'd like turn my baby's cock upside down. He and I would sleep during the day so we could be up all night. So I could watch my oldest sleep. I was just like watching him. And I remember probably like 4 months, we had just gotten into that summer. And I was like, wait a minute, girl, you didn't sleep. Because I remember I woke up one day and I'd accidentally fallen asleep and I was like, oh, panicked. I had been away for 3 weeks. I was like, what? Like, okay, you got to get it together. Like, you are too afraid of the world. You are manic. You are like, you got to calm down. Like, I was creating more stress because I was just so worried. And I said, you gotta get back on a regular sleep schedule. Just sleep. Try to sleep. You gotta like try to regulate yourself. Because I was like this all of the time. And then about like when the summer hit, when my son was home every day, I felt this just like calmness come over me. And I was like, okay. And I was still angry, really, really, really angry, and really, really felt like I had been betrayed. And like I felt like I was filling myself up with like vitriol, because as much as I love my kids, they didn't deserve these circumstances. And there was one person to blame. And so in my mind, I was spending so much energy on how I was gonna just, right? And then that summer, it just kept going, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. This is good. We swam today. This was good. We're going to swim every day. Swimming was good for us. We are going to swim. We are going to go to the beach. The beach is free. You forget things like, oh, the beach is free. We're going to go to the beach. We're going to swim. We are going to sit in the hot tub. We're going to go to my mom's house and spend a week at a time so my kids can be spoiled rotten. That's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. Just the littlest things that meant so much for my headspace because it was so cloudy. Like even now, I can barely remember. I didn't open a suitcase that belonged to me till the first month. Because I was just like, I'm not staying here. I've got to figure this out. I got to focus. I got to be in attack mode. What if something happens? I felt so exposed. And it wasn't months until I felt like, okay, I'm safe. Okay, all right, okay. We're good. We can do this thing and we can do this thing and we can do this thing. Okay. And I don't know if everyone gets there as fast as me or they get there faster, but I pray that's the goal. Get to the place where you can just
that exhale.
Just breathe.
And it makes sense that would take, time. It would be a gradual process because that's how, they start gradual. And sort of, I imagine that, we can't just like, okay, walk away, we're done, like moving on from the get-go. There is a process, almost maybe even a grieving sometimes of having to let that go so that we can move forward in a different direction.
There is a massive grieving process. You have to grieve a person that's alive and well. You have to grieve the ideas and thoughts that you had for your future when you started with this person. And you mourn, you genuinely mourn. You mourn for yourself. You mourn for that version of you who believed so deeply in the person that duped you. You mourn for your babies and what you thought their future was going to be. But I promise you that does not last forever. You get to a place where you're like, we are good. We are good and we're going to get better. And you can say that and you can feel it. And you believe it so deeply, it just starts to happen. This door opens, this door opens, this thing happens, this thing happens. So many things happen when you are just not in a space where you're like, I don't know what to do, right? Your eyes can't be bugged out of your head if you want to see clearly. You have to find a way to make some peace with it, even if it's this much, just like a little bit. That little bit will change everything.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to transition to a few of the questions that we got ahead of time from participants. And those in the audience know that you can use the Q&A function if you have additional questions. Try to see if we have time for some of those. One of the questions I have here is, as the leader of an employee resource group for women at a large company, what are some of the indicators or clues we can look out for that our colleagues might be experiencing domestic violence?
You want me to answer?
Whoever can go first.
I liked what you were saying earlier this week, Askia, about your experience.
I would love to have a wonderful answer that is helpful. I don't have one because when I was having the worst time of my life at home, I was thriving at work, killing it at work. One second. I have guests apparently. 1 second. Sorry. Thriving, killing it. Like when I say killing it, like I was that girl at work. I was dressed impeccably. I was getting in early. I was staying late. I was a wonderful employee. And I was a wonderful employee because I didn't want to go home. Work is so good. I'm going to I hired a nanny for my son. That's how much I worked. I'm going to work because work made me feel good. Work meant that I was more independent. Work meant massive for me. And so there was no way for anybody at work to know. But I think if there were a resource that maybe HR shared, I might have scanned a QR code. I might have explored it. But no one talks about domestic violence at work. They talk about workplace things, but they don't talk about things that are happening at home. It's like I don't know if it's a matter of risk mitigation or what, but they don't talk about it. So if you could maybe send a QR code out to your team, create a relationship with your local YWCA, do some volunteer days so that you can see and understand the work they do and how impactful it can be.
I think what you said, oh, sorry, Caroline.
Excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if one sign could be like coming in earlier and staying later, like staying at work longer, like Askia was saying. If that's unusual for a staff member, maybe something's going on. I think that if we've seen one domestic violence relationship, we've seen one domestic violence relationship. And so every victim or survivor is going to have different symptoms and may not feel like it's even safe to talk about it at work, even though it's not, even if there's not like a threat of their partner being there. It's one thing to notice, and then what? To answer the question of then what, I would refer to Jemma's DV 101, recognize, respond, refer. She can train, she can come to you and help you recognize some signs or what to do once you do kind of have some concerns.
And one thing, I'm just going to add real quick that what you were saying, Askia, perfectly highlights that sometimes we can never know, right? As somebody outside of that relationship, we would have never seen the signs because they are intentionally hidden, right? Because they happen at home behind closed doors.
Oh, yeah. And when you're being emotionally abused and threatened, there are no marks. We are so trained from television, media, whatever, to see a black eye or a bruise here or a bruise here. We're so trained to that. But what if the person is smarter than that? And what if they're harming you and not necessarily leaving bruises?
Yeah.
Right. We're especially as like women, we're trained. Is our friend being abused? You know, we're watching our friends' partners and we're scrutinizing and we're watching and we're checking and we're questioning. But at work, when we're in our blazers and our blouses and our smiles are on our face and we're winning at work, excellent team player, all the things, contributing, producing, no one goes, what could possibly be wrong at home? Like, keep bringing in the money. We love you, thank you, stay here forever. But they're not saying, go home, which is exactly what I didn't want to hear anyway. I was like, I'm going to be here from 7 to 9, however long it takes. I will entertain clients every night. I will do whatever it takes just to avoid an encounter.
Yeah, thank you both for that. The next question I have here, this person says, I am a leader at my organization and a survivor of domestic violence. I often struggle with the label of survivor because quite often people treat me differently or look at me differently when they view me from that lens. What has been your experience making that transition, and what helped you find your voice?
Well, I still struggle with the term survivor. It doesn't feel good. I struggle with the term survivor. I struggle with the term shame. I don't like those words because I am nobody's victim. People take victims and they put them over here and they pat them on the head. No one takes a victim and upholds them to the light and goes, look at how triumphant this person is. They go, oh, she's this, but she's also that. Or he's this, but he's also that. And it's like, I'm just Askia Underwood. That's it. I experienced some horrific circumstances in my life and I stand in that. This is not a question of denial, but I don't appreciate when someone pats me on the head and treats me like I'm smaller than them because of something someone did to me. I just don't allow it. And I'm very intentional about correcting people if I feel like they are minimizing my experience or what I could be or who I am because of something someone did to harm me. And I hope that you do that too. I hope that you check people, just check them when you feel like they are trying to minimize your existence and what you could be. You just go, a real smooth correction. Honey, if you want to address me, you can talk about my past and say that I'm a victim of, but I am a victor. Love. I'm a victor. Nobody's victim. Go on and let them keep talking.
So powerful. I'm a victor of, not victim of. It reminds me of this forward leaning progress that we were talking about earlier, that future thinking.
Absolutely. I stand in victory. Like, I win. I'm still here. If this person had it their way, I would not be. And I think the more we empower women to make them feel that, then they will be able to go, you know what? I don't mind going over here and getting these food stamps. I'll take this step back. Because I'm an earner. I know what I can do. I have confidence in my capabilities. And if I don't, that's going to be my goal. I may not have confidence in it. My goal is to go and be great at something. I'm going back to school. I'm going to do that thing so that I can learn a new way for me, so that you don't ever have the opportunity to make me feel small again.
That's victory.
That's victory, honey. I stand in it. When I say I stand in it, I mean it with my whole heart. With my whole heart. I champion it. I know things are hard. There's so many labels, and that's the problem. The stigma around labels. You are that person. You are that girl, that guy. You are that person. You are so much more than a violent person's victim. So much more than just a survivor. Honey, you are thriving. You are a winner. You are gold. You are a champion. You are future focused. You are forward thinking. You are a bright light. That's what you are. You are not crying in the closet anymore. We're not doing that. We did that. We made it through that. We overcame that. You are an overcomer.
I think this question is really a great tie-in from that. Is how do you manage to reconnect with your body after what you've experienced?
So scars. I read a story in the LA Times, like in between my transition, and the person that had been a victim of these crimes from her partner had cigarettes put out on her, and she had these scars. And the scars were in visible places, like behind her ear, so she couldn't put her hair up, and on her shoulders, so she wouldn't wear her shoulders out. And there was this dermatologist, doctor, who was going to do some laser to try to minimize those. And I remember thinking, what do you do when you have the scars? You have to carry that piece too. When you wear your story. And I have this tiny scar. I have a tiny scar, and I look at it and it just reminds me of, and it makes me, it doesn't make me as sad as it used to make me, but it just reminds me of girl, thank God you aren't there anymore. Thank God you aren't there anymore. I hope that answers the question. Because scars is a different thing. A very different thing. I know a woman who had her eye closed by a guy who hit her in the head. My grandmother was a victim of domestic violence. She'd been sliced across her stomach. She carried that scar, right? So like the scar thing is, gives you a little bit of PTSD, but it gets better. It gets better.
I would think that some treatment, whatever that looks like for your interests and needs for maybe PTSD or kinds of interventions that focus on reconnecting mind and body, could be some place to start. I think about our therapy team here at the YWCA that offers eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy to work on some of these things, of feeling things in our body and lessening the load of feeling what we feel and what we remember. I've also heard of some people getting cool tattoos around some scars, like making something look like a magic wand or, something personally relevant. If that's your thing, that's just something I heard of recently and I thought was a pretty powerful way to own it again, take it back and say, this is still me and mine.
Yeah, therapy is super helpful. I didn't do it by myself. I certainly had a therapist. I love a good therapist, someone who's going to be honest with you, fully honest with you, hear you, help you process your experience and empower you. That's the therapist you want. Someone who's going to not just go, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened," and write a bunch of notes and go, "Well, maybe you could do." No. You need a person who's going to look at you and say, "But this is who you are," and be a constant reminder of, this is who you are. This is who you want to be, and push that back on you and give you like just a little bit of wind in your wings so you can get back to the person that you describe when they ask you, when you say, "Tell me about you." You're like, "Well, this is who I used to be. And I'm poor now," or "This is the thing now," right? "This is how I define myself now." And they're working on getting you back to that person or better. That's who you want. The person who's going to be like a really sweet palm in your back. Go, just keep going. That is who I had here in LA. And she's now moved, but she's had a brilliant, amazing therapist who I really, really liked and appreciated. So 10 out of 10, highly recommend. And I come from a place where we don't even believe in therapy. Typically, like, it's not a thing. You're just like, girl, go pray about it. Get your Bible, read, and go sit down somewhere. God will handle all of it. And God handled a lot of it, but so did my therapist. So did my therapist. And I did some work too. I did some of the things I needed to do too.
Absolutely. I think it's so beautiful to have that, to feel that support, to feel heard. I think is so powerful for everyone to have that kind of validation, their experience, and somebody who can help champion, the self that we want to become. Again, that future thinking. As we wrap up today, I kind of want to ask each of you, what fills your cup? Like, what helps you come back to you and helps replenish yourself?
I'll let
It's a
you
lovely thing to think about. Oh, sorry.
It's a lovely thing to think about. You answer first.
Okay. The quickest way for me to feel like Caroline again is going to be listening to music. It's I can count on it every time. That's the sensory intervention that is like, if there is a horn section, I'm better. I'm me again.
I used to say exercise. Exercise is, by the way, fantastic when you transition out. Go to boxing classes. But now I really love just being at home. Like just opening my door and seeing my plants and my kids and my husband and my candles. I'm just like, okay, like home feels so great to me again. And it always did when I was little. So home is like, it's my like self-care sanctuary. It has all my masks and all my gadgets and all my things. And being able to turn home into a sanctuary was something I really wanted to do again. A home was just so not fun for me for such a long time. So I love, love, love.
What a beautiful, like, full circle being able to have that again. I must agree that home can be such a beautiful escape sometimes from everything else that's happening.
I went from escaping home to loving home. And truly, truly my escape.
I want to thank both of you so much for spending this time with all of us today and just sharing your experiences and your wisdom and some just beautiful notes to take us through the rest of the week.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was helpful for somebody, anybody. I hope that if you just heard one thing and you share it with someone you think might maybe need to hear it, I hope that you do.
What a beautiful message. Yes. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. This will be recorded and sent out to everyone so we can continue to share it and spread those wonderful messages. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks so much.